Welcome to another episode of Pilots Say What, where we get to hear what pilots have to say. My name is Zach, and I host this podcast from week to week where we talk about all things general aviation. We tend to have guests that are student pilots, CFIs, and occasionally an airline pilot. So I hope if you're listening that you get all you can get out of this podcast. And today we'll be talking with Caleb. He's one of our CFIs here at Thrust. We are a flight school. We're all over Texas. We're expanding across the country, and we're going to be talking about how he got started in his flight journey and how he became a CFI and some of his goals. Caleb, would you mind introducing yourself today?
Yeah, my name is Caleb Sanders. I'm a CFI here at Thrust Flight. I completed all my training through the ZTA program. I started my private pilot certificate in December 2024.
Okay.
And then 13 months later, finished my multi-engine add-on to my commercial pilot cert. And in January 2026. And so, 13 months there for the entire program for me.
Okay.
And so, and then in March, I ended up getting hired as a CFI, moving through that interview process. And very, very thankful for this opportunity. And it's been very competitive, and it's just been a huge blessing to be in this position now and continuing to learn and push myself to be the best flight instructor I can be.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's one thing that I think is really cool. I don't think that a lot of people understand how hard it is to get a CFI position sometimes. So our students, as you would know, are guaranteed at least an interview.
Correct.
But it's not likely. We don't have as many instructors as we do students, so that implies that not everyone's getting the job, obviously.
Yeah.
So I think it's really cool that you got to that point. I want to double back a little bit and understand you a little more still. Is there something that maybe your friends and family would use to describe you? Is there a certain set of words, or what would they say about you? It's kind of hard to look at yourself from the outside, but I'd like to know and get that kind of going.
Man, how would they describe me? I think friends and family would, even before aviation, would just definitely describe me as hardworking. I've always enjoyed work. School has, I guess we'll get into that later, but I was always kind of mixed on my performance in school, but always from my first job at 15, like I really loved working, and work ethic was there, and I've always enjoyed it. And then outside of Thrust, I enjoy rock climbing. I played golf in high school. I don't get to play as much anymore, but playing for 4 years in high school every single day of the week after school was very helpful for muscle memory and just getting good at golf. And so I still enjoy playing once a month or so.
Right. I'm going to be interested to know if any of that translates to flying in some ways, only because it's craft oriented. Obviously, flying a plane isn't the same thing as playing golf, but I tend to see that people draw correlations between something they did before, like that,
for sure,
to aviation. But okay, I cut you off. Was there something else you were about to add on?
I don't think so. Those are kind of my hobbies, and I love my family a lot. I've got my wife, Alexis. Celebrated our 4th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's really crazy how time flies. It really does. And it feels like we just got married yesterday. Last year, we ended up rescuing a dog, Luna. So we have a German Shepherd mix. She's the sweetest puppy. And so she's our little baby right now. But no kids yet.
Okay, no kids yet. I got you.
That's as close as we're getting right now. So,
I understand. I've talked to a lot of CFIs who had a kid and then started flight training, and I'm like, well, that takes a lot of I don't know how to say that. A lot of guts, I guess.
A lot of energy. I honestly have no idea how they do it. Just being from my experience, I don't even. I can barely do it. I can't imagine adding a child to that mix, but it is definitely can be done, and there's other people that do it, and I have mad respect for them.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think to myself about it. I'm like, man, I'm afraid to take certain risks now, let alone with a newborn. Okay, So we met at a previous job. Before I worked here, I
Yeah.
worked at a retail store. It was actually Apple. And we didn't really interact a whole lot there, but we did work together a
Yeah.
handful of times, and we did interact at points. And I remember you. So I just think that's interesting because I think back to what it was like working that job and sort of even the outlook, and thinking, man, what's next, you know?
Hmm.
And I find myself here in a lot of the positions that I'm here at Thrust. And I can't help but to think that you understand what that's like.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about what made you finally kind of pull the trigger on starting flight training?
Yeah. So when I worked for Apple, I was on the operations team
Hmm.
at Willow Bend. I worked for Apple for 6 years.
Okay.
I started sorry, I started at Willow Bend and
Yeah.
then I moved over to Galleria Dallas whenever Willow Bend closed.
Okay.
And that's where we worked together at
Right.
Galleria.
Exactly.
Yeah, so after my time at Apple, towards the end, I was finishing up my bachelor's degree,
Okay.
and just trying to figure out, like, I loved my position in Apple,
Hmm.
and I loved the people there. I loved the company. But yeah, looking forward, I was just trying to figure out, after getting married, like, what do I want to do next?
Yeah.
That big question of the future. And so, yeah, I started kind of exploring other options.
Hmm.
And the first thing that kind of sparked the idea of aviation in my mind, we were visiting my brother and my brother-in-law in Fort Lauderdale,
Right.
and we were on the beach, and it's right off the departure end of Fort Lauderdale Airport.
Hmm.
And so we're just sitting there, and I'm just watching like plane after plane after plane take off,
Right.
and it's such a silly moment, but it was like the first time I was like, wow, that's a lot of planes.
Yeah.
And for some reason that just kind of sparked this like Google search.
Yeah.
Also, my mother-in-law had something to do with, I can't remember exactly how that happened, but she like said, "Oh, I think there's a pilot shortage or something like that." And so I just like
Mhm.
searched it up, and I was like, "Oh, wow, there was during that time." And so that was kind of the thing, the spark,
Mhm.
that ended up leading to my discovery flight,
Mhm.
and then eventually led to quitting my job at Apple and starting the ZTA program,
Okay,
and
cool.
yeah, taking my flight training seriously.
Yeah, that is really cool, and I can only imagine some of the things that would pop into my head if I was in your position. Was there some obstacles or some things that you had to kind of get over in your mind in
Hmm.
order to start flight training? Because one thing that comes to mind is you just finished school. You're gonna go into a whole nother training program, another kind of school. Um, were you worried about any of those kinds of things? The fact that you felt
Yeah.
like you're still starting something new?
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, for sure. I think at that time I really tried to figure out, at that time I hadn't finished my bachelor's.
Okay.
And so my motivation was very low for
Okay.
finishing my college degree
Mhm.
because I didn't know what I wanted to use it for.
Yeah.
I started college at Collin College and Community College, and then
Mhm.
ended up transferring to UT Arlington.
Okay.
At UT Arlington, I ended up dropping out. This was
Mhm.
right during COVID,
Mhm.
because my motivation was so low, and I just
Yeah.
didn't really see the point. After getting married, my wife really was a huge motivation there to just going back and finishing online. So I
Mhm.
finished my bachelor's online at Western Governors University,
Okay.
a fully online school,
Mhm.
just to get that piece of paper
At
and
least.
get something for all the time and money I spent for my bachelor's.
Okay.
And so during those last few months of finishing up my that college degree, I realized I wanted to do flight training, and so I was motivated to finish, even though I didn't need it for flight training necessarily.
Right.
I just wanted to just get that finished, kind of close that chapter
I
of
see.
my life before starting flight training,
Yeah.
which yeah, led to this
I
opportunity.
can I can understand the idea of because I like to close one door before opening another sometimes, especially when you feel like that's something you had to do, you know.
Well, it was
Okay.
very hard too because, like,
Yeah.
I really, as soon as I went on that discovery flight, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I want to start tomorrow."
Yeah.
I mean, I was so excited to start,
Okay.
but then I was
You did
like,
that before you finished your bachelor's, the
it was
discovery
like
flight.
4 or 5 months before I finished,
Okay.
and so there was about 4 or 5 months before I, started flight training.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, I had the aviation bug, and I wanted to fly, but I was like, okay, I just need to finish this up. It's 4 months of
Yeah.
classes, and I'll be done, and then I'm gonna start.
So that took your motivation from one place to another.
Yes, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden, I cared a whole lot about finishing my bachelor's because when I finished, I
Yeah.
knew I was gonna be able to start flight training,
Yeah.
which that's pretty dang cool.
Yeah, exactly. That's some motivation.
And which is just so funny because it literally had nothing,
Yeah.
no direct correlation other than the fact that I just wanted to get something out of the
Mm,
time and money I spent
yeah.
before.
That makes sense. It's cool how our brains work that way. I understand.
Motivation does a lot.
Yes, and it doesn't tell any time, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it comes through. And
Yeah.
so when you're coming to start flight training, you do your discovery flight, and then you start looking in. What do you start looking into flight schools after that, or where'd you do your discovery flight?
Yeah, so I ended up doing my discovery flight at ATP,
Hmm.
and it was a fantastic discovery flight. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. During those 4 to 5 months in between the discovery flight and picking a flight school,
Hmm.
I just did some additional research,
Yeah.
and realized that the big community aspect was
Mhm.
missing
Yeah.
from what I was kind of hearing from ATP, and definitely produce really great pilots. Nothing wrong with that program, but I really did like the community aspect of thrust flight.
Yeah.
And I think the very first connection I got to thrust flight was one of your videos popping up on YouTube because getting a lot of flight videos,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh, I recognize Zach. Like, what is he doing? And I was like, oh, he's a pilot now. And I was like, wait a second, is he a pilot? And then, learning more about you, but
Yeah.
that's what got me connected to thrust flight.
Hmm.
And
That's awesome.
then, didn't redo a discovery flight, but just did a tour
Yeah.
at the school.
Hmm.
And yeah, once I saw like how many students were like on campus, how many instructors there were, it just felt like a much better support system.
Hmm.
And that was the big determining factor to choose thrust over other flight schools was just the people involved
Yeah.
throughout the flight training process.
That's actually super cool. That you could pick that up on the tour. I think I've actually had a lot of people say that they've taken a tour here, and then just from the tour alone, they could kind of pick up on some of, I don't know, how dare I say, the energy around the campus, and they're like, I kind of want to do this, and
Yeah.
so that's great. That means a lot. That worked out that way.
Yeah, I think every tour is slightly different based on
Uh-huh.
who's there, and
Right.
I mean, you could be a really slow afternoon and it seems a little bit dead, but yeah, most of the time, I mean, there's plenty of people up on campus, and
Hmm.
I got that feeling from my tour,
Hmm.
and it was one of the main factors that sold me on thrust flight.
Sweet. Okay. Thank you. I'm gonna jump around a little bit here. When I, you told me about, okay, so you said you were watching the planes. Was it with your brother?
We
Would you
were
say
visiting my brother-in-law. We
visiting
were
your
just
brother?
sitting on the beach,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
with
You
some
sit on the
family.
beach visiting your brother. You see the planes going over. You think a little extra about the planes more than you did before. It leads to you say your mother said something.
My mother-in-law said
Your
something
mother,
about there's a pilot shortage right now, and that's what kind of sparked that first search.
and then you go down a little bit of just a little bit of a rabbit hole, enough to take a
Correct.
discovery flight. You see what it's like. Wow, this is cool. Did you get to take control of the aircraft at some
Yeah.
point?
Yeah, no, for sure. I got to take off on the Discovery flight,
Yeah.
and I mean, he just told me what speed to look for it on the airspeed indicator and when to rotate. And I pulled up, and it was, I mean, out of Addison here, and so it was like really, really cool because I mean that was the first time I'd been in a small plane.
Yeah.
So just completely different feeling than being in the back of an airliner
Yeah.
or
Exactly.
larger aircraft. Like it's just you feel so close to the ground and the views are incredible. But like when you lift off, especially out of here, out of Addison, and you climb over these buildings, it is a spectacular view, and for that first time, it was breathtaking and
That's really awesome.
sold me pretty quick.
Right, and so then you take a tour and you're like, I want to go to the school, and then you get started, right?
Yeah,
I'm gonna come back and visit more about that, but I kind of want to jump ahead and I want to ask you about what was maybe one of the most difficult things about flight training, especially in those first three ratings. You have to go through going from no aviation experience that I'm aware of,
correct. Yeah,
and
no
then
aviation
yeah,
experience.
okay, yeah. So you go through private through commercial is a pretty big task, let alone the rest of it. Can you tell me a little about one of the most difficult experiences there?
Yeah, I think the biggest like challenge throughout flight training
Hmm.
in my mind is just not comparing yourself to others. One of the benefits of thrust flight is whenever you start each rating, you're in a ground class with some other students,
Hmm.
with an instructor, and typically runs for about 4 weeks. And you're learning just um, overview,
Hmm.
or yeah, detailed ground knowledge laid out in a very organized fashion.
Right.
But you get to know those guys and girls in your class very well. And
Yeah.
especially in your private class, you have kind of a unique connection to those because, like, this is all y'all's first experience together. You don't know anyone else, but
Hmm.
you know these guys in your private ground class, and it's super exciting.
Yeah.
Um, but then you realize that everyone is not going to go at the same pace that you do.
Mm.
And so there's a lot of other factors that play into the amount of time that you spend in flight training.
Right.
And so one of my biggest challenges early on was comparing myself to the two other guys that were in my private ground class.
Yeah.
And so they were moving faster than I was in private. I think I struggled um, at the beginning, just getting comfortable in the plane. Huge transition, and everyone takes a different amount of time to
Hmm.
make that transition.
And lots of new lingo, and
Oh
it's a
yeah,
whole nother world you stepped into.
it's there's so many different things from, I mean, the aircraft systems to talking to air traffic control, which is terrifying at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then laws and regulations and aerodynamics. There's so many topics that you're exposed to. And I mean, it's truly just like trying to drink out of a fire hydrant. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just not um possible to absorb it all in one go. So you
Right.
have to be able to break it up into different sections and
Mhm.
digest it over time,
Absolutely.
in
Yeah.
order to get that information to stick.
Right. And so
Um,
they start moving along and it makes you feel like, am I doing something wrong, or what
yeah,
goes through your brain a little bit?
yeah. I mean, everyone has a different comfort level, and are going to learn new skills differently. And
Right.
so, for me, for private, it took about 4 months to move all the way through private. For about one of those months, it was a combination of, like, I think we had an ice storm, and then I got sick, and it was right during like my solo time, so my solos got delayed for about a month,
Hmm.
through a combination of factors
Hmm.
that were kind of outside of my control. And so, really, during that time, I learned I really have to focus on the things that I can control,
Hmm.
and not let the things that are outside of my control kind of bog me down.
Right.
Because the biggest challenge is just mentally, just staying with it and staying motivated
Mm.
over the course of well, specifically for private, that was 4 months for me, but really over the course of the entire program,
Hmm.
staying motivated to yeah, be successful.
Right. Bear with me. I'm gonna try to piece a couple things together.
Yeah.
You are you enjoying flying still?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I
Like,
mean,
can you tell me a
flying.
little bit about that experience of just enjoying it?
I mean, it's just so cool. Like, as a like currently as a CFI.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as a CFI now, like, it's insane that, like, they pay me money to go and fly aircraft with students, and I make money doing that. Like, that's insane. Like, it's so cool that I get to
Mm.
go up in the skies and do that every
Yeah.
day. And so I think it's really easy, especially as a flight instructor. There are so many challenges,
Mhm.
and just especially at being a relatively new flight instructor, I'm
Mhm.
just learning so much. And there are days that it's just so difficult, and you're like, "Is this worth it?"
Right.
But then the next day you go up and you get to see the sunrise
Mhm.
at 3,000 feet over Lake Lavon, and you're like, whoa, like, this is really, like, how many people get to do this?
Yeah.
And it's just it brings me back to the fact that I am just very thankful for the opportunity to be in this position where I have access to this new career, and this is going to really be a really cool future.
And I guess the reason I jumped to that question is because I asked you about what was one of the most difficult things about flight training, and you didn't really say. Although you did mention, flying a plane, learning all these systems, all this new information, this new world, the lingo, the ATC. Um, you didn't really say anything that was too much directly related specifically to flight training, as much as you did what it kind of took to get through flight training. The hard part you mentioned about flight training was learning how to only focus on what's within your control. And I think that maybe I mean I'll ask you this. Do you think that some of the reason why everyone falls so much in love with aviation is because how much it helps you grow as a person? I know that's kind of a
Yeah.
reach, but you say that I hear everyone talk about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you have to grow as a person
Yeah.
in order to be successful in aviation for sure.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if I can touch on exactly what causes um everyone in aviation to fall in love with it.
Right.
But it is just so unique in the craft that we're developing here.
I didn't actually even mean to ask it exactly that way, but I wanted to point out that I think it's really cool how you describe the hardest part as something that you learned for yourself and something that isn't specific just to aviation, and
Yeah,
and I think that that's really cool how everyone kind of describes things that are hard and things that they like about aviation that way.
yeah, and of course, like all of the knowledge and the skills that you're building it's very challenging and very difficult.
Hmm.
But I do believe that like if you are passionate and you are driven, anyone can get through flight training,
Hmm.
if they're putting in the effort. Like there's no like concepts that are just so complex you just can't comprehend it. Like it's broken down in a very understandable fashion.
Hmm.
But if you don't put in the effort, you're not going to get there. But
Hmm.
if you're driven and you're motivated, I truly believe that really anyone can um, get through flight training if they put in the effort. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take
Absolutely.
for each individual to get through.
And that makes sense. And that leads me to like a new question. Uh, you mentioned earlier about going through school, whether it be high school or even college, and it's kind of hard to maintain that motivation at times. You're always kind of iffy. It's not that you knew you didn't necessarily lack the work ethic, but yet you kind of found yourself in that position with school. Let me ask you about flight training, right? You go through ground courses, and there's a lot of book work. There's a lot of studying. I
Yeah,
think sometimes people don't actually know how much studying and book work there is involved
there's a
in
lot.
flight training. So, does how does it compare to when you were doing that, book work in school?
Yeah. So when I was in college,
Hmm.
during when I first started college at Collin,
Hmm.
I was working at UPS
Hmm.
before Apple. I worked as a preload supervisor
Okay.
from basically 12 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Hmm.
Monday through Friday. I would get off work at 10 a.m. and then go to class at 11, and sit through a couple hours of classes and or sleep through almost a couple hours of classes, and then I
Mhm.
would go home.
Okay.
And so working that night shift was horrible for all life outside of work, basically.
Hmm.
And so during that time, I loved my job at UPS. I loved the work itself, but I had very little motivation to study and perform well for school.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, whenever I started flight training, I I was just super motivated because it
Hmm.
was like, this is something I want to do. This isn't something I have to do. I have an
Hmm.
opportunity to start flight training.
Okay.
And it wasn't something I was kind of forced into or
Hmm.
had to do.
Okay.
It was something that I got to do, and I really saw it as an opportunity. So as soon as I made that switch from school being something that I wanted to do and
Yeah.
not something that I had to do,
Yeah.
I all of a sudden was very motivated to study. Also, during flight training, you're studying all this ground knowledge, and it's not like college where you're not going to use the majority of that in your career.
Right.
Like you just have to do it for the class, and then you kind of forget it, and like you're most likely not going to be using that every day for your job.
Right.
But flight training, you are. Like you're studying this stuff, and you're going to be tested on it on your stage checks, your end of course exams, and if you're doing a check ride, you're going to be definitely tested on it then.
Yeah.
But you're going to be using it all the time.
Yeah.
And so you're, especially during private, you're like building this foundation of knowledge that is not just busy work, but like it's essential that you know this and you have a strong foundation of knowledge to keep you safe in the skies.
Yeah.
And like to pass your stage checks and check rides.
Right.
And so I saw that very early. And the more you study, the easier your testing situations are going to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, you get to reap the rewards of studying hard pretty soon after you start putting in the hours and really studying.
Okay, I think that's good insight, especially for people who are like, there's so much ground. If there is so much studying, then I don't know if I'm going to be good at it, right? Oh, I'd rather do something. But it's a different experience, and I like to ask that for myself because I tend to sometimes I try to talk myself out of why I may or may not be motivated to do something, and I'm like, oh, I should just be able to be motivated no matter what. And the reality is, it does vary based on how you feel about it, and it's okay to just play into that. That's what I think when I talk to the pilots all the time, saying, "Oh, I don't lack motivation here at all." So
yeah, and I think it's super important early on to identify what's motivating you, because if you don't identify that motivation early on, there are going to be times that you are pushed to the limit and you feel like you can't continue. But if you have a really strong and you've identified specifically what's motivating you, you can hopefully push through that and be successful.
Right. And I'm gonna hopefully, I don't know if this is a reach either, but I like to try to figure out, is there not a time so far in your flight training? I say so far, I mean you're a CFI now, but I like to consider that part of the journey.
Yeah.
Has there been a time when you're like, man, this is tough, and I'm not sure how to get past this next spot, or maybe even you plateaued a little bit, and you had to kind of remind yourself, you had to kind of give yourself a kickstart. Was there a moment like that at all that you could recall?
Yeah, so I don't really remember like an extended learning plateau. But I mean, there were definitely multiple times in private where it I never had a moment where I was like, I don't think I can do this, but there were moments of like, man, this is like really hard. Like, what do I need to do to get through this? And so most of that came and then during flight training, whenever students are maybe reach that learning plateau, one of the great things about thrust is you can fly with other instructors other than just your primary instructor, because whenever you're taught something from one person, they may be teaching it completely perfectly, but something just doesn't click in your mind. And then you fly with another instructor, they say it very similarly, but a little bit differently. And then for some reason that clicks and you can move on. And so one of the benefits of just having a wide range of flight instructors here at Thrust is just you get to fly with a wide range of people. They're going to teach things a little bit differently, and it really helps students that are stuck in specific areas to push through that and master that skill and move on.
Yeah, and I've heard that same take from a few people, so I could understand that, and I think I could be a little hard headed when I'm learning. So hearing things in different ways gives me a lot of context, kind of like osmosis in a way. So
Yeah.
that's helpful. I guess now where what I wonder about is there like a big picture for you? Because you started flight training. I mean, I know you were looking for what's next after what you started with and different jobs, and you went to school and everything. Is there kind of like somewhere you'd like to live, or is there maybe an airline you'd like to fly with? What's next for you after a CFI?
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, I think my end goal is flying for the airlines. I would love to fly for American. All my friends and family are here in DFW.
Mm-hmm.
But we are open. You really, in aviation, you do have to be willing to relocate
Mm-hmm.
based on where the jobs are.
Okay.
For me personally, it would not be ideal,
Uh-huh.
but that is just something that I talked about with my wife before starting flight training, and then
Oh.
especially getting hired, or before I got hired as a CFI,
Mm-hmm.
just thinking about like, what are we willing to do in order for me to get a job as a CFI in a very competitive job market right now.
Right.
And so we were willing to move,
Mm-hmm.
but thankfully haven't had to move yet. But yeah, ultimately the end goal is the airlines.
Right.
And yeah, how I get there. I'm pretty flexible, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
on how I get there. I don't have like that. Um, I don't know. If I end up doing something else and in aviation long term, that would be completely fine as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now my angle is the airlines
That'd be awesome. Yeah, and of course, like you're saying, being flexible is gonna improve your odds of getting somewhere in the first place. So that's great.
for sure.
Uh, I I want to ask you more about some of the technical things because and I'll follow usually as best as I can. But I like to get into it for some of our audience so that they can kind of get an understanding. Uh, I don't know. People enjoy talking about the actual technical, like the maneuvers and things like that. Before that, just one more question I had was. You talked to your wife about how to kind of handle, working as a going from working to not working at all to then working as a CFI after having payments due for a big loan and things like that.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about that when you have to have that conversation with your wife about how you want to take out a big loan and not work anymore? Like, how do you first of all, how did you plan out some of that? And then kind of how did that conversation go, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So we had some existing savings like leading up to flight school and before I quit my job at Apple.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely did take out a large loan to finance my flight training.
Okay.
And so really the thing that boiled down to um, that conversation was just like, is this worth the long term investment?
Mhm.
And we made the decision that it was.
Okay.
I think everyone has to make that own decision based on their circumstances and
Mhm.
um, yeah, their means in the moment.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a very, very big financial decision.
Yeah.
And I am just really, really thankful. My wife is the one that she's a music teacher
Okay.
for leadership prep school. It's
Mhm.
a charter school in Frisco.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, she was working the entire time I was in flight training.
Mhm.
And she has just worked so hard and given up so many things to allow me to have this opportunity for kind of our long term future.
That's really awesome.
And so, yeah, she's the one that let me do it. And I am forever grateful to her for allowing me to.
Awesome. Okay, and that's great to hear. And that always speaks to the fact that support goes a long way. And doing something
100%.
as big as learning how to fly planes for a living,
Yeah.
Um, and I guess the last question I have on that is when you become a CFI, how do you handle and again maybe the answer is similar because you have a little bit of support at least there. Um, but when you become a CFI, how do you handle the fact that you're going to be on the hook for a really large loan payment every month? Because I think for me, if I'm thinking hard enough into the future, that's you can see that that's going to be a difficult time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. Because yeah, honestly, the pay as a CFI,
Hmm.
if you don't have some other type of income from a significant other, it would be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to, um, yeah, meet your needs and pay off this massive loan.
Right.
And so, yeah, it is. I think boils down to either having roommates or being in a situation where you can have some additional support
Hmm.
while you are instructing.
Right.
But yeah, it is. You got to look at your own budget and figure that out. But it
Yeah.
is, um, yeah, a very difficult time during that. transition as soon as you start having to make those minimum payments on your loan.
Right. And I
One
like to ask that just because of the expectation. Like people think if you really want to plan it out, if you can at least kind of have a plan for yourself there, I feel like that's like one of the toughest parts of it.
Yeah, and one
So,
thing that I did refinance my original school loan, which significantly lowered that interest rate,
mm,
which was incredibly helpful in getting that um, minimum monthly payment to a reasonable number,
right.
barely reasonable, but a little bit more manageable.
hmm
So that's definitely something I recommend sooner rather than later to any flight student is to refinance your loan
Right.
if you're able to as soon as possible.
And did you go through a different company?
Yeah, so my original loan was through Sally Mae,
hmm
and yeah, just very we were very limited in the interest rate from that initial loan.
Uh-huh.
But then I refinanced through Earnest.
Mm.
Yeah, an
I hadn't heard Ernest
education.
yet. People say SoFi sometimes.
Yeah,
So,
there's different options. I
mm-hmm.
got a bunch of things in the mail from quite a few different companies, and
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of went on to their each website and put in information and try to get a range on what they were quoting in regards to just an estimated interest rate.
Right.
And Earnest was one of the most, was the lowest one.
Yeah.
And so that's really the thing that ended up allowing me to refinance with Earnest.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you for sharing that.
Of
Um,
course.
is there I'm going to completely zoom out and switch up a little bit here. Is there like a maneuver or a topic that you kind of enjoy the most, whether it be like learning it or teaching it?
Yeah. So as soon as I started my insert rating, I
Mm-hmm.
realized it's very procedural. It's very black and white. You either know the regulations or you don't.
Uh-huh.
When you're flying VFR, there's a lot of additional variables when you're trying to navigate non-towered airports and navigate around traffic that maybe not be isn't on ADSB or they aren't communicating. When you're flying IFR, the regulations are just very black and white. So once you
Yeah.
know the procedures, it's a little bit more straightforward. And so when I started my insert rating, I realized that pretty quickly on and
Yeah.
allowed me to enjoy it more.
Yeah. You got to kind of get you got to really apply your brain and put it into like a thought process, and that's cool. People say they get a lot of clarity through IFR, but when you go in a commercial, you have to get back to looking outside the plane and not relying on the instruments so much.
A
I
hundred
hear that
percent.
can be a tough transition.
Yeah, it definitely can be.
Yeah.
Going from because during instrument, you're either flying in the clouds or you're flying in simulated conditions under the
Mm,
view limiting device
mm,
or foggles, and so that all of a sudden taking those off and kind of learning those stick and rudder skills
right.
are going to be um, yeah, a big part of the early stages of your commercial training,
Mm.
especially since we go immediately into that right after instrument rating.
Is it safe to assume, do you teach mostly instrument students?
So right now,
hmm
as a flight instructor at Thrust, I'm checked out to teach commercial students, instrument students, and then CFII students.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. And so you kind of have a mix of different types of students, right?
Correct.
Gotcha. Well, I was gonna ask about the instrument since you kind of enjoyed it. Is that one that you enjoyed teaching as well? And what is it about instrument that you feel like most people struggle with?
It's a lot of dense information to start with.
Okay.
It's a mass amount of material that you have to be familiar with
hmm
by the end of your instrument rating. I mean, it's broken up into stages, but it all boils down to there's a lot of information that you have to memorize
hmm
that can definitely be overwhelming.
Right.
And so, from my point of view, from day one, when I have a new instrument student start, I really try to emphasize the fact that it's super important that you're putting in the hours every single day from the very beginning.
Right.
Because as soon as they pass that written test
hmm
for the FAA, they can fully dive in. And we use Shepherd Air for the knowledge test, and so it's just kind of rote memorization. It's
Right.
fantastic. It allows us to get through those written tests a little bit quicker.
hmm
But when you pass the written test, you don't understand all the concepts for those questions. It's just rote memorization.
Right.
But as soon as you get through the written test and you're actually studying the material that is going to be required for your instrument rating, the oral exam and the practical test.
Mm.
You you just have to spend the time either studying with other people, studying on
Mhm.
your own. You just have to spend the time in the material,
Right.
learning it, or else you're not going to be successful. You can be the best pilot in the plane, but if you don't spend the hours on the ground, um, and this is the most important instrument because it's it's like 80-90% ground knowledge
Right.
and 10 to 20% knowledge in the plane. But most of the knowledge in the plane is just applying that ground knowledge to and procedures to the whether you're flying an instrument approach or departure or whatever.
Right. Okay, and,
Um,
and that can make sense. I think that's really interesting. I didn't really understand the different ratings when I first got into aviation, obviously,
mhm.
but I like the concept of private. Tell me if I'm wrong. Private's kind of like get the foundation of knowledge, learn a lot of technical things for instrument, and then reapply everything you've learned in commercial in a much more broad way, I guess.
Private is the foundation.
Hmm.
Instrument rating, I think, is the most practical
Practical.
for us, just because most of the time, if you are pursuing commercial aviation, I mean, airliners, they're not flying visually
Yeah.
at all, mainly.
Yeah.
They're all on instrument flight plans. And so, if you are flying commercially in the future, you are going to be flying IFR. Um,
Hmm.
almost all the time. And so that's going to be what you're practically using every day in your in your future aviation career.
Yeah.
But then once you get to commercial, the flight portion of the commercial certificate, you're really
Hmm.
learning how to feel the plane,
Yeah.
and really master the control of the aircraft.
Mm.
And then you learn that through those commercial maneuvers.
Mm.
And then on the ground knowledge, you're just learning those private level concepts to a much deeper understanding,
Right.
and just expanding that knowledge base for the kind of ground portion of that commercial pilot
Right.
certificate.
Okay. And that I mean that makes a lot of sense to me. We haven't talked a lot about the CFI or CFII ratings and things like that, but I hear they go kind of quickly, but there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot different learning style and a lot different testing style.
Yeah.
And did you realize that becoming a flight instructor was typically a part of the journey before
Yes.
you started flight training?
Yes, so that was I know there's other, and I was aware of other jobs that were a possible way to build hours and experience to get to that 1500
Hmm.
hours for the ATP certificate. But I did from early on understand that CFI is going to be the best way to build that experience, and also more importantly in my eyes build um just continue to develop my skills.
Mm.
I think as you're instructing students, it's very challenging because you are constantly being pushed to expand your knowledge and
Hmm.
your skills in the aircraft.
Hmm.
And I don't think you get that if you're just flying like an oil pipeline survey,
Hmm.
and you're just burning time, or maybe towing a banner.
Yeah.
Like you don't get that level of the quality of flight time.
Yeah.
I think is very important as a CFI. The quality of flight time is very, very high,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of work, but it
Hmm.
really, really does push you to um, yeah, push
Be-
your knowledge and push you to be a better pilot, which
Yeah.
is really my goal, not to just get to 1500 hours, but I want to be a very well-rounded and competent pilot
Yeah.
as I'm going through this.
Yeah. That would make a lot of sense. And I mean, I've asked you a lot of questions, but one I've been wanting to get to is about exactly that. Uh, Something about aviation that I didn't understand was that flying a plane is a craft. It's not just like a skill, I guess. And the reason I
Hmm.
try to draw a distinction is, for example, when you said you liked to golf, right? And you used to golf
Hmm.
somewhat frequently at one point. And
For
so
sure.
I can imagine that you're always working on tweaking little things to make sure you can have a better stroke and get the ball more where you'd like it to go. Um, is there any correlation between like that? that thought process that makes you want to get better, that you feel like kind of carried over into aviation? And maybe that's too far, maybe that's a reach of a question, but I'm wondering if your brain does anything with that.
Yeah, so there definitely is like a desire of like I as a flight instructor, you cannot be complacent and just be like, "Okay, I've achieved all my ratings, I meet the qualifications, I'm good now. I don't need to push myself." Like from the very beginning, like the flight instructor certificate is a certificate to learn and
Right.
continue to learn. And that learning is never going to stop. Even once you're at the airlines or flying jets, like you're never going to stop learning.
Yeah.
And if you do, it's a very dangerous situation.
Right.
As a flight instructor, you are, never stopping to learn. So, what that means kind of for your craft,
Hmm.
you are, as you identify those weaknesses and like weaker areas,
Hmm.
it really encourages you to dive in deep to those weaker areas
Hmm.
to strengthen them
Right.
and just overall increase your skills as a pilot.
Right. And the reason I was going there is because I know there's certain jobs you can have where you can kind of get away without always needing to be looking at it that way, where you need to get better at the skill day in and day out. And I just don't think aviation fits in that bucket, and it's very different than that. You can't just clock in and clock out.
Yeah, it's definitely a different bucket. I
Yeah.
mean, you especially as a flight instructor, like I have the lives of my students in my hands.
Yeah.
And it's just the risk is so high.
Hmm.
Anytime, I mean, obviously there's risk to anything in life
Right.
after you get out of bed. But getting in an airplane, the risk already is much higher
Yeah.
than a normal person.
Yeah.
And so it's just so important that the things that, um, those weaknesses don't correlate to putting yourself in a dangerous situation.
Hmm.
And you really have to be aware of that and recognize the dangers that come from being complacent and not
Hmm.
continuing to develop those skills even after you're a flight instructor.
Gotcha. And I can see. I really like the way you put that about how complacency is more dangerous in aviation than it would be in another position in
Oh,
most
yeah.
jobs. So that's cool. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Um, okay, and I guess I'll ask you this before we go. If you were talking to your younger self, the one that was looking stuff up on Google about flight training, and you wanted to give that younger self some advice about getting through flight training in a way that felt good to you and to help you improve, what would you say to your younger self?
Yeah, so I mean, I think my the big thing I would say to my younger self is like you can you can do it. I should have spent more time earlier on and spent less time. I should have cut out video games at the very beginning of flight training. I learned that a couple months in.
Yeah.
But really as soon as I started flight training, you have to be 100% in. You can't do especially with our accelerated 141 program, you do not have time to do additional activities
Mhm.
outside of flight training. And
Right.
so you have to be 100% committed and be willing to sacrifice your entire schedule during that 13 months in my case
Yeah.
to flight training and be able to set everything else in your life aside. And if you are not in the position to do that, there's other options, other flight training options, or in my case, I just ended up kind of pushing that flight training back. So whenever I did start, I was able to commit all of my energy and resources towards flight training
Yeah.
to be successful.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people can get a lot out of that, especially because a lot of our audience are people who are thinking about flight training or are in flight training or have paused their flight training and want to continue it. And then, sometimes people watch because they want the extra push. They want the insight from someone else who's going through a similar experience. And so thank you for sharing so many of your experiences so far. And I'd like to say, if you're listening or you're watching to this episode of Pilot Say What, where we get to hear what pilots have to say. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Zach. We have this podcast every week. We have for over 2 years now, and we'd love for you guys to tune in on the next episode. If you enjoyed this one or hearing what I'm saying now, liking, commenting, and subscribing definitely helps us out and helps more people like you find our podcast. So thank you again, and we'll see you next week.